having me as well. I'm from the police. I work in the family violence section here in Adelaide. We're split up in different areas, so depending on where you live, you'll probably be in contact with different people if you ever have to engage with the police. So what I was asked to speak about today is what kind of happens when a domestic violence incident occurs and you do call police. So let's talk about, hypothetically, and we will talk about women being victims and men being perpetrators, because that's overwhelmingly what we see. A man hits a woman, she's incredibly fearful, she calls police for help to stop the situation, or whatever reason she's in fear. When police arrive, they'll consider the scene, but also look at what's happened and then potentially and more than likely arrest the offender of the offence. So quite often the male is taken away with police and the victim is left at home. We do engage further patrols to come and be with the victim to do whatever follow-up's necessary there and then. Once the offender's arrested, he gets taken to the city watch house or similar and is interviewed by police. So I guess we'll go down the line of what happens with the perpetrator first and then what happens on the victim contact side as well. So the man's been taken from wherever the offence occurred, more than likely the home, and he gets taken to the city watch house or whatever cells are closest to the offence occurring. When he's there, he'll probably be interviewed by the police and go through a bit of a charging process. So this is mostly done in the cells. He'll be interviewed on video for the offence, and more than likely it would be called an aggravated assault, where you're physically harming someone else. Within the cells, you're charged, you're fingerprinted, photographed, all those really unpleasant things occur. And it's highly likely that man, although you are able to apply for bail here in Australia to go be let out from the cells, it's highly likely that bail won't be given to that person. The reason for that is because we're trying to protect the victims of the crime. So we need to ensure that victims are safe. So that often means that the male will stay in the cells overnight until the next court date. So if it's that you're arrested on a Tuesday, you'll go to the next earliest court hearing on the Wednesday. If you're arrested on a Friday night, you won't go till the following Monday when the next court hearing is. So depending when offences occur, people are quite often kept in, if it's on a Friday, for quite a long time. That person, or the perpetrator, will then go to court, to the next court hearing, and the matter will start going down the lines of the court process. Within that also though, we've been given some really lovely legislation which allows us to put an interim intervention order, a police interim intervention order, on that person while they're in police custody. This legislation is working really well. So men, while they're in the cells, have been given an intervention order straight off. I did bring booklets about intervention orders, but what this means is that men have conditions put on them to help us keep the victim safe. So these kind of conditions include that they're not to assault, threaten or harass the protected person, they're not to make contact with the protected person either directly or indirectly, so that means via SMS, phone contact, letters, fax, via Facebook. And indirect contact means I can't tell that person can't tell someone to tell you something, the victim something. Other kind of conditions in that are that they're not to attend the victim's home or place of residence or their place of employment, place of education. And quite often there's a metre kind of distance put on that, 50 metres, 100 metres. Similarly, the same thing's done for the person, so they're not to come within that same distance of the person. Other things include returning property and things like that, not to damage the victim's property. But what we also now have is a really, really helpful clause for us to keep victims safe, is that we can actually remove perpetrators from the home, which means that it's a vacate clause. They're not to go back to the home until a certain point if the court then allows them. And there's another one where we can do a gambling clause if we find that gambling's an issue. So for the perpetrator, they then go down this track of court, which can sometimes be quite a lengthy process. It's likely that they will get bail through the court if they don't get it from police. and then the matter carries on until there's some sort of resolution. In terms of the victim though, obviously victim contact's a little bit different. We get in touch with, we're at the scene with the victim, we'll take a statement and we'll begin our investigation. From there, it's likely that the victim will either stay home or go to a place that she chooses, where she feels safe. If that's not all possible, we engage with other services to ensure that the victim is safe. That's what it's all about for us, protecting the victims, protecting the children. So what happens within the family violence unit is that this incident occurs, it's likely that patrols will attend. Within the next day, you'll get in touch with a family violence officer like myself, who make contact with the victim to ensure that they are safe, that they're feeling safe, and we will do any further work with that victim that's required. So we're not counsellors, we don't counsel, although we will listen, but that's not our role. Our role is safety, ensuring that no further offences occur. So we'll work through and explain the intervention order if there is one. We'll, like I said, engage with services such as migrant women's, I don't know that you're called that anymore, I don't know.
Migrant women's support.
Yeah, you are migrant women's support program, or whatever service it is. I know those little blue cards, the DV Gateway, they're really good as well. So whatever support the victim needs, we will work through that with them. Again, to a point where they're safe and they no longer need police involvement. We do often engage with legal services for victims as well, because there's family court matters which have been spoken about, which police, that's not our role either, because we look at the state laws, whereas family law and family law acts and orders are federal, so they're separate to us. In terms of the victim, we will get in touch with counselling and be there for you. What can then happen as the process goes along? The restraining order becomes confirmed, and luckily here in South Australia we've been able to get indefinite orders, which means that order won't be removed unless it's the case that you request it, but other than that, it'll always be there. It gives police extra powers to be able to get involved in protecting you. It kind of gives us permission to arrest offenders if they are making contact with you, for example, if they are starting to cause fear, if they're harassing, whatever the behaviour is, we can get involved. I guess I wanted to talk a little bit, I think it's all been covered around the physical assaults and stuff, but in terms of police getting involved, we usually work around criminal offences occurring. So we use the aggravated assault charges a lot, which is when a domestic partner injures or assaults their partner. We work with Child Protection Act a lot, we work with child abuse a lot, and those sorts of things. We work with stalking legislation as well, because they all come under the kind of family violence, domestic violence banner. I'm hoping you guys have questions for me, maybe, because I'm being pretty black and white in what I'm saying, because we work with legislation, and legislation is black and white. I know there is a lot of grey. So I guess I'm thinking things like when we're dealing with emotional abuse or things that aren't quite criminal offences, people do worry, where do I go with that? What do I do? How can I get help? Because we do know that is abuse. We do know it's part of family violence, but under black and white law, it's very difficult to use that. So in terms of getting an intervention order, where it sounds really awful to say, when there has been no physical, I don't want to dismiss the other types of violence though, there are ways to get intervention orders still, and that is through legal support and through victim support services here in South Australia also offer assistance with getting restraining or intervention orders as well. So it's difficult for police because we do acknowledge all the other forms of violence, but in terms of what we can and can't prosecute, we really need, I don't like saying we really need, but it's awful to say that physical offending. Doesn't mean we'll dismiss whatever's going on, though. There are options for us to look at reporting, even arguments that are making people feel uneasy in their relationship, things like that, under a different kind of reporting. what that does though is build a picture for us in the event that things do escalate, or in the event that the victim does wish to go to a different service to approach them for an intervention order. There will be things reported with police that can build up the story of what's been happening. So unless there are any questions.
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, go for it, please.
Because both of you are right here. In terms of the intervention order, I quite a lot have issues with my clients to explain to them, based on my understanding, the intervention order is for both parties. So if it's if I'm a woman and there's an order for my partner, I cannot violate the order and go to my partner. But it seems very difficult for clients to understand that the intervention order is for both parties, not only for the man or the offender.
Sorry.
Am I right or wrong? I'm not sure. Can you clarify that, please?
So with an intervention order, the protected person, so that's the victim, has to comply with the intervention order, as well as, if you want to call it, the defendant, the person against whom the intervention order is. So, and it is really important that the protected person complies with the intervention order. If there are children mentioned on the intervention order, and say mum, without family court orders, or without provisions in the intervention order, without a clause in the intervention order that allows her to do so, organises for the children to go and spend time, say, with dad, who the intervention order is against. Mum can actually be found guilty of breaching the intervention order because she's allowed protected persons, or she's basically assisted in breaching the intervention order. So it covers the children as a protected person. So it is really important that you do comply with the terms of the intervention order. And one of the things that we always say to clients at Women's Legal Service, and Linda, you can let me know, is that with the intervention order, as with any court order, its strength comes from people following it. So if you do not follow that, then it may not work to its full potential. So if you would like full protection of the intervention order, it's really important that you do follow it. So if the other party is breaching the intervention order, and when I say breaching, so say for example they keep calling you up, you need to tell the police that that is happening. And maybe the first time there might not be a response from the police, but if it keeps happening, then the police will respond. But it is very important that people follow court orders because they are court orders. And if you do not follow them, there can be consequences. And I do want to mention, also jump in at this point, with an intervention order, a lot of clients are very worried about getting an intervention order because they think it's a criminal offence. When you get the intervention order, it's not criminal. However, if the other party then breaks the intervention order, the breach of the intervention order is a criminal offence, and then it will go on the criminal record. But simply having an intervention order does not mean that it's on your criminal record. And with intervention orders, people can sometimes have intervention orders that allow them to live together, but just not to threaten, harass, or intimidate. So intervention orders, I actually really like them. You can make them to suit your personal situation. And so you can have ones that allow contact, but you can also then have ones that allow no contact at all.
I've been asked to actually interpret what you said.
خواهش. سوال من این بود که وقتی اینترونشن اوردر صادر میشه در واقع این فقط برای یک طرف هستش، در صورتی که قانونا برای دو طرف هست. و همین خواهش کردم توضیح بدن. و توضیح این هستش که در واقع حکم دادگاه یا پلیس که صادر میشه برای دو طرف هستش، یعنی نه برای کسی که مرتکب جرم شده، هم برای کسی که مرتکب جرم شده و هم برای کسی که در واقع حکم صادر شده تا در واقع دفاع بشه و تحت حمایت قرار بگیره. هیچ کدوم از دو طرف نمیتونن در واقع با هم تماس بگیرن. و همه صحبت طولانی شد، من یادم کلش شد. کل مطلب این بود که حکم برای دو طرف هستش در واقع. Or something another question.
Okay.
Or maybe a statement. In terms of the, you mentioned that the police is looking at the physical abuse, mainly, or sexual abuse, because it's evidence-based. In terms of emotional abuse or verbal abuse or financial abuse, there are ways of gathering information. For example, clients can go to police stations, make statements. If is my understanding, also reporting to GPs or psychologists, counselors, teachers, because we have mandatory reporting roles. So there are ways of gathering information about emotional abuse and verbal abuse, social abuse, or financial abuse as well. Just wanted to add that part.